Basically what I want from Monster Hunter 6 is Monster Hunter Iceborne with underwater combat. Every person who calls themselves dang old gamer has that one game in their past that they played that they were just like, man, I love video games. And for me, that was the dang old Monster Hunters. So yeah, it's really cool growing up with this thing, watching it change from what it was and what it is now. Because I grew up with this dang old series, I really want them to give freaking water combat another try. So let's jump into why I dang old like Monster Hunter's water combat. To put it simply, the underwater gameplay is just another world. And I'm not just saying that for the pun. Or am I? Yeah, I just liked how the game was basically different when you were underwater or land. Like, it was really cool seeing the different changes in fights. And there was a lot of interesting fights like Gobble, the Guy Chris, the G Chris, however you want to say it. Cetus. I ain't down bad for like the G Chris, like somebody I know. And they know what I mean when I say they know that I know that I know that they know that I know that they're down bad for the G Chris, you know? But my personal opinion, I prefer Cetus. Cause like, how the heck can you compare this to this? But yeah, that's why I liked underwater combat. It was just another way of experiencing the game. You fought these monsters on the land, and then you would fight them underwater. You would usually clap them on the land, and then they would usually clap you underwater. So it's just a nice balance of things, you know? Everybody gets clapped. Especially that one dumb old fish with freaking human legs that doesn't even deserve to be named because he's so gosh dang garbage. And when I finally was able to jump in the water and clap his cheeks, I freaking did it. Because I freaking hate watching him freaking swim back and forth just only so he could jump back in and do the same thing. Yeah, I don't hold grudges against that guy. I swear. I totally don't. And all those experiences of actually clapping monsters in their actual habitats, showing that you're the top dog in the hunting scene, has definitely left fond memories for me in my Monster Hunter career. And so was it perfect? Well, no. So let me explain things I didn't like about water combat. So my two major problems with the underwater gameplay has to be the clunkiness of both the movement and the combat. First being movement, it is kind of a pain how slow you feel. Like, I understand that being underwater you should be moving slower than if you were on land, but it just feels way too slow sometimes. Like, if you're just trying to get to another area of the map, it just feels like it takes forever just to swim through to get to that loading point. And I could only imagine how much longer it would feel if we actually had to swim through those parts like World, where those small sections you do have to actually go through. Or in these old games, those small intersections were just loading screens, so I can only imagine how that would change. Next would be the combat, and the main gripe with the combat is the dodging. It is really weird figuring out how the dodging mechanics work in this game, and I'll provide examples showing this. So if you're not attacking, your weapon's put away, you will dodge in the direction you are moving. With your weapon out, it follows the same procedure. Go forward, go back, go side to side. It will be the same thing as if your weapon was sheathed. But if you attack and you want to dodge after an attack, it works a bit differently. Side to sides work exactly the same. You'll dodge in the direction you're inputting. But up and down changes to vertically rather than horizontally. That took some getting used to, because like, I didn't know that after I attacked I would have to wait a bit if I wanted to dodge backwards or dodge forwards. Just know that's how that used to work, and that's what really bothered me, was getting used to that, because not only was that troublesome, but then you also had to deal with the camera, because depending on how the camera was placed, like, you would be dodging in a certain direction too, so you had to keep in mind placement of the camera, how you dodge depending on if you're attacking or not attacking, and then knowing if you're going to dodge in a certain way. And then on top of all that, there was no equivalent underwater to the land Superman dive. So you were pretty much screwed if you know there's a big like charge attack coming, but you're like just on the cusp of getting hit and you're swimming away and you want to dodge, but if you don't dodge early enough, you're going to get hit. So there is no Superman dive equivalent, and that is troublesome for certain attacks. And then my last issue, which is kind of worth mentioning, is the air gauge. It just doesn't help that you have this gauge to keep track of while also dealing with this funky movement. So once you understand like bubble locations, and then also if you use the items, like, it isn't too bad. Now that I have covered the main things that bothered me about underwater combat, I can now discuss ways that Capcom can possibly fix some of my problems. So we'll go down the list with my gripes. My first issue was being movement. I know that there's ways that they could make us move faster, whether it's be adding some new armor skills, or they make it so there's like water drakes underwater, similar to like the wind drakes, where the wind drakes you hook onto them and you fly with them, but instead of flying through the air, you're like flying through the water, or swimming technically. And if they still have the slingers and clutch claws, they probably could add some kind of like wedge beetle or something that you could like latch onto underwater to speed up your progress. And then another thing I was thinking was adding some kind of like current or something that if you like swim in it, you gain more movement speed. There's ways they could improve the movement, so then it's not as much as a chore going through various sections. So those are my suggestions on how they can improve the movement. Let's talk about my second issue, being the way you evade or dodge while underwater. I feel like that could be easily fixed, especially with the options they have nowadays. I think if they have those options, but for underwater combat as well, whether you be attacking or not attacking, and you could decide whether you go vertically or horizontally, I think that having the option to dodge in a different direction would definitely help solve that issue. Then the water gauge, if there is going to be more water, either add more bubbles, more ways of getting your bubbles up, whether that be items, decorations, armor pieces, food skills, or just in general make it so like hunters have crazy lungs now. Or like if you're wearing a helmet, it doesn't matter what kind of helmet, it could even be like an earring. If they're wearing a helmet, they somehow get water breathing. There's definitely ways they could improve the minor issue of air gauge for me. And then lastly, I believe that they're definitely going to do a lot better the next time they go around with water combat, because it's been almost freaking 10 years since Tri was released. And on top of that, they also got their dang old new RE engine, and I'm certain that that hardware back then was limiting their imagination for underwater combat. The fact that they have that formula with World just fine, they could definitely venture into the water combat zone now. That is the reason that I can believe whatever they put out for this next Monster Hunter, whether it be water combat or some other new form of combat, is just gonna be busting. Speaking of busting, look at the games that they're busting out with their freaking new RE engine, being the Resident Evil games, you got the Devil May Cry's, you got the freaking Dragon's Dogma 2, that's looking busting. On top of that, freaking Rise was made with the RE engine, even though it was stylized. Like, hot diggity dang is that game smexy too. Like, each one of these, knowing that they were made on RE engine, to just, I can only imagine, especially with like games like Dragon's Dogma. That game looks hecka beautiful. Just looking at the style of Dragon's Dogma 2, that is the style I'm guessing Monster Hunter 6 will kind of follow, where it's realistic, but it's also, you know, fantasy creatures and whatnot. For as beautiful as World was, I can only imagine how it would have looked if it was actually built on this RE engine that they now have. Speaking of Monster World, let me quickly speedrun some dang old changes that I think would improve the current Monster Hunter World and Iceborne formula. So the first suggestion / improvement would be just having solo quest and gathering hollow quests separate. For all the previous Monster Hunters, even Monster Hunter Rise had these systems. It was just nice having solo quests and gathering hollow quests separate, is because you had these quests that you had to do yourself, just so you could see how you improve over time. And of course, if you got some friends, you know, you could just go in the gathering hall and upgrade your gear, and you can go back to do those solo quests by yourself and actually clap cheeks because you have that crazy high rank gear. But we don't talk about that. But yeah, just having those quests that you could track your own progress was really cool. Number 2, make freaking skippable cutscenes, or make it so you could join the cutscenes if they're watching it. Like, it was a freaking pain having to wait for your friend to just jump into a quest because they were watching a cutscene, so you couldn't really join them as they were watching the cutscene. So make it so you could join them as they're watching the cutscene. You don't have to add the other hunters in there. Like, if you do, that's cool, but you don't have to. Just make it so we could join, so we could actually just be there waiting if we want to. Or just make it skippable, because, like, that was the main reason that replaying Monster Hunter World, especially, was a pain, because I couldn't skip the cutscenes. Like, just make it so you could skip them, and you could just join your friends' cutscenes. Like, nothing fancy. We could just watch it with them, or, you know, if they just decide to skip it, they could skip it, you know? Number 3, if they do bring back the clutch claw and wounding mechanic, they should just definitely try to change it somehow, maybe add some more ways of wounding the monster, or just making it so weakness exploit itself is just a flat percentage. Having to maintain that wound to get that extra crit was kind of a pain, because each weapon had their own like amount of frames before they actually got the scarring off. Some weapons were really built for the whole scarring mechanic, but some weapons were kind of cucked. And then on top of that, I feel like it removes the whole aspects of monsters having harder skin or like harder armor. It kind of ruins the whole hit the monster in a certain area kind of mechanic in the game. Number 4, make it so freaking decorations, you can craft them. And if you want to add the whole RNG thing, give it to the freaking dangle charms. Because it's easier to deal with a build that doesn't have the right charm than it is to deal with a build that doesn't have the right decorations. Number 5. Improving the augmentations. Monster Hunter World itself didn't have a really good augmentation system. Not only was it RNG to get these freaking augmentation crafting things, but then each weapon had their own augmentation crafting things, so don't do that again. But if you were going to implement some system, do what you did kind of with the Gathering Lands, where the items were obtainable and they were set items that you could get if you just grinded for the right monsters. So augmentation wise, do what you did for Iceborne, not what you did for World. Number 6. Reduce the effects of getting knocked onto your back, and then also the tremors. The getting knocked on your back thing is just completely ridiculous to me, because you're a freaking guy that can wield a freaking greatsword, but then as soon as you get knocked on your back and you're just trying to struggle to get up, you just can't. Like, that doesn't freaking make any sense to me. So the whole aspect of it is just confusing, and then there's no way of building around it. Like, there isn't any decoration or armor piece that like kind of helps you get back up on your feet. You're just kind of screwed chucking your slingers that usually don't do anything at them. And then the dangle tremors needs to be reduced as well, for the tremors should be something like this. And not this. And yeah, those are the main things I want to see improved to the Monster Hunter World and Iceborne formula. Like, if they just change those things up, the formula is perfect for me. Like, if they just do those things, the next game will be already better. Alrighty, with all that out of the way, let's jump into my dangle predictions to see if I'm freaking right. And if Monster Hunter 6 doesn't have water combat, I'm pretty much all these predictions are going out the window. But do I really care? No. I just freaking want to talk about this freaking water combat and how I do want it back in the future, because they definitely deserve another shot. So first prediction is, water combat / gameplay, like I said. Second guess is going to be the flagship, and the flagship, I'm guessing, is going to be a Leviathan, because it's been a while since we had a Leviathan. And if they freaking add water combat back, well, what else better than a Leviathan? And I'm thinking this Leviathan will be like a rival to Legicris, so then, they could have some dangle turf wars and stuff. It'll basically be like Seregios and Rathalos, but it'll be like Legicris and this new flagship. Basically, you got rivals in the sky and you got rivals in the sea. Number 3. Water drakes. Like I said earlier, with how they could speed up water movement, they could use like water drakes basically to propel you in the water. I think they're going to implement something like that. That's a prediction. Number 4 is basically a prediction for the story. I think it'll be based around some massive elder dragon in the water that basically causes earthquakes and tsunamis similar to Cetus. But, of course, there's going to be some different elder dragon that's causing it. And as usual, they'll blame the flagship, thinking it's the flagship's fault. But then it's actually just this hidden elder dragon. It's the classic Monster Hunter's trope. So my 5th and final dangle guess / prediction is going to be a new weapon. And I'll just pick, like, the Tonfas from the Frontiers, just to pick a random one. I just can't picture them making some new weapon that hasn't been already made before, because like it's easier to balance something that they already have rather than making something completely new and then balancing that. Of course, I would love them to make a new weapon, because then it's just like, whoa, But like, out of all the ones they have, I think Tonfas kind of makes the most sense for me. Also, because I might want to try it too, I'm not gonna lie, Alrighty, and that's pretty much the dangle video. I basically challenged my brothers, that freaking Godzilla 2 Scuzz and the Bear Kangaroo, to make their own wants and predictions for Dangle Monster Hunter 6. So at the end of this Dangle video, I'll freaking show their icons. I might even pop up something right now so you can click on it. And just, compare each other's thoughts and stuff. And also, to see who edited their video better. We already know it's me, because, I put in a bit too much time in this. But, just go give them some love and see if you agree with them more, or if you still agree with me, just to see different horizons, because nobody has the right formula, everybody has their own opinions and what they want and what they don't want. So see what they think, and drop down your freaking own thoughts in the comments, because you probably don't even like water combat. It's understandable. Like I said, there's things that were terrible about it, but it's just the freaking nostalgia of it, and also it's weird. Like, I love it and hate it at the same time. It's just a weird relationship. That's it. Bye-bye now.